Hey guys, Jack here from iCanPlayDrums.com. Today I want to give you a really simple but effective tip on actually protecting your car from your drums. Normally we're thinking about protecting our drums, and that should absolutely be your primary concern, especially if your drums are inside hard cases or something. You want to make sure that there's foam lining and whatnot in case the drums move around inside the case. And if you're interested in things like that, learning a little bit more about that, I mean most hard cases these days come pre-lined, but if you need to do it yourself, check out the link below. There's some tips on that. But one thing that we don't often think about is actually protecting our car from our drums. Now, a lot of drum cases, especially hard cases, or you might have, like I've got there, a little bits box that's got some sharp corners on it and things. If the drums are moving around as you're steering and driving around, it can actually start to scratch up the interior of your car, and that over time can devalue your car and start to look pretty messy. So I just wanted to give you a really quick tip, really simple tip. You possibly have already thought of this yourself, that's fine, but if you haven't, this hopefully will help out. This is the family car, and we just have a carpet in the boot here anyway, just because, putting shopping down, or maybe we've got the kids' bikes or whatever. But I actually can use this, of course, on stage if you're playing on, say, a wooden surface or something like that, and you don't want your drums to slide around. It's always good to have a drummer's carpet. So it's really simple. All you're going to do is make sure that the carpet side of the carpet is facing down, so that that's what's in contact with your car. Okay, so nothing's going to rough it up there. And all you're going to do is fold it out like this, and it's going to flare up at the sides, and that means that if your drums move left or right, that they're not going to scratch the sides either. And the really good thing about this is that most carpets come with a really grippy bottom surface, so that when you're using the carpet you're not sliding around, or when you're walking on the carpet you're not sliding around. And what that means is when you put your drums on that grippy surface, they are less likely to move around as you're driving as well. Alright? It's a really simple thing. I wish I had thought of it ages ago. Obviously didn't put enough thought into it, but that's working out really well at the moment. So if you can get some use out of that, absolutely buy a carpet that's got some grip on it and try that as well. If you don't need it, just fold it over, and there you go. So that's one tip. Now, I don't actually use this car that often. This is more the family car. And I wanted to talk about something else. You don't actually need a big car if you play drums. A lot of people think, oh, you're a drummer, you must have a huge car. You've got to have a wagon or something like that. I had a wagon for a long time, but that was mainly because I was running my own band and I was taking PA and drums to a gig, and there was no way that I'd be able to get a full vocal PA, the speakers and the mixing deck and all of that, plus a drum kit into a gig in a small car. But I don't really do that much anymore, and if you're just traveling around town doing a lot of gigs and you don't need a big kit, you actually don't need a big car. So of course it depends on what kind of kit you're carrying around. If you're adamant that you've got to take 2 bass drums and you've got to have your rack and you've got to have all these things, well then you're going to need a van. Okay, but for myself, just playing around town, I do a lot of gigs around town, and I really use quite a small kit. I actually use, believe it or not, an 18-inch bass drum, and I detune it. I put a double ply head on the front, stick some muffling inside it, and it's actually got a really decent thud to it. And yes, it doesn't have the bottom end of a 22-inch kick drum, but if it's the sort of gig that needs more bottom end, then it's going to be mic'd up anyway, and they can dial it in through the PA, so it's not a huge concern. Then I usually run 10 and 12 toms, and I detune the 12 and then run it as a floor tom. Snare drum could be anything at the moment. I'm using a 12-inch snare drum, but you can use whatever you like. And believe it or not, I'm going to show you how I pack it into my car, which is a lot smaller. I'm actually putting all my hardware inside a sort of small to medium size suit case. So, of course you can use a traps case, and if I was touring I would definitely do that. But you don't have to have big gear. I think that's a real misconception, that you've got to do multiple trips in from the car. My thing is, I want to be able to get my drum kit from my car to the stage in one trip if I can. And people might think, what? You got to be joking. Well, not really. If you've got a small enough kit, you can actually do it, and I do it every weekend. So now I'm going to show you how to pack drums into a really small car. Okay, so here again I've got the carpet. This is folded over, and the carpet and the side is touching the bottom, and that red case is actually my hardware case, and it's got wheels, so it's actually really easy to load in. So that goes in first. Then I put the stool in with the legs of the stool facing forward, and then that case there is actually the floor tom, so that's a 12-inch tom, and the 12-inch snare drum is actually sitting on top of it. So that's next. And then here we have the 10-inch tom. Again, these are all soft cases with handles, so it's really makes it easier on the car. And the final thing, of course, there we've got a little pedal there, and there you go. It all fits. Bass drum is going to go on the front seat. You can see I've got a little blanket there. I'm just going to put that on top like that. Really simple, no frills set up. It just protects the seat from the bass drum. So there you go guys, a few tips for you today. Of course, primary concern is protecting your drums, but make sure you're protecting your car from your drum cases, and you don't have to take a big kit if you're just gigging around town. We'll see you in the next lesson. Bye.